Here's a number that should bother you. 100 years ago, if you got engaged, there was roughly a 1 in 10 chance the ring had a diamond in it. Today, it's closer to 8 in 10. Nothing about the stone changed. Diamonds didn't get rarer, or more beautiful, or more meaningful. What changed is that one company spent decades and a fortune teaching the entire world that a diamond was the only acceptable way to say I love you. The price you pay for a diamond isn't rarity, it's a marketing campaign, and it's still running. We tell ourselves a story about diamonds, that they're impossibly rare, that they hold their value like gold, that giving one is an ancient tradition, older than any of us, passed down through generations. Every part of that story is wrong. Diamonds are not particularly rare. They do not hold their value. Most of what you pay evaporates the instant you buy. And the tradition of the diamond engagement ring is younger than your grandmother. It was written by a copywriter. The whole thing is one of the most successful pieces of marketing in human history. And almost nobody notices they're inside it. Start with the rarity myth, because it's the foundation everything else sits on. In the late 1800s, enormous diamond deposits were discovered in South Africa. So much diamond came out of the ground that the people mining it realized the obvious danger. If they all sold freely, the price would collapse. A diamond would be worth about as much as the rock it looked like. So, they did the opposite of competing. They merged into one company, De Beers, and that company set out to control the supply of the entire planet. And it worked. For most of the 20th century, De Beers moved somewhere between 80 and 90% of the world's rough diamonds through a single channel. In the 1930s, it was around 60%. By the late 1990s, it was still about 80%. One company, deciding how many diamonds the world was allowed to see. Here's the mechanism, and it's beautifully simple. Diamonds come out of the ground in large quantities, but De Beers never let that flood reach the market. It stockpiled, hoarding diamonds in vaults, and released only a careful trickle, enough to meet demand, never enough to satisfy it. That's not a supply of a rare thing. That's a common thing, being rationed to feel rare. And if you think this is ancient history, look at what happened when prices started slipping recently. By late 2024, De Beers was sitting on roughly $2 billion of unsold diamonds, its biggest pile since the 2008 crash, deliberately holding stones back rather than let the price fall. The machine that manufactures scarcity is still switched on. Controlling supply keeps the price high, but only if people actually want to buy. And in the 1930s, they didn't especially. The Depression had crushed diamond sales, and there was no strong custom of proposing with one. So De Beers hired a top advertising agency and asked a bigger question than how do we sell more diamonds? They asked, how do we make a diamond feel mandatory? The answer arrived in 1947, when one of the agency's copywriters wrote 4 words: "A diamond is forever." Advertising Age later called it the slogan of the century. It did something subtle and enormous. It fused a rock with the idea of eternal love, so that to question the diamond felt like questioning the marriage. You weren't buying a stone anymore. You were buying proof. Then came the part that's almost too clever. Once a diamond was mandatory, how much should a man spend? There was no natural answer, so De Beers invented one. In the 1930s, the ads suggested about a month's salary. In 1980s America, they quietly raised it to 2 months. In Japan, a country where diamond rings were essentially unknown before World War II, they pushed 3. Think about what that means. The rule you've heard your whole life, the one that makes a man feel cheap if he spends less. That number was never a tradition. It was a dial, set by the seller, turned up whenever they wanted you to pay more. And because it's an emotional purchase, people paid whatever the number said. So the price is controlled and the demand is manufactured. Now here's where it hits your wallet directly. Buy a diamond ring for $10,000, walk out of the store, and try to sell it back the next day. What do you get? Typically 20 to 50% of what you paid, often less. You lost half to two-thirds of the money instantly, not over years, not to wear and tear, but the moment the receipt printed. That gap between retail and resale is the clearest proof of all. A truly rare, valuable object holds its price. A diamond doesn't, because most of what you paid was never the stone. It was the story wrapped around it. And now the story is finally breaking. From a direction De Beers can't buy up and lock in a vault. Lab-grown diamonds. Not fakes, real diamonds, chemically and physically identical, grown in weeks instead of mined over millennia. Put one beside a natural stone, and no jeweler alive could tell them apart by eye. They've done to diamonds what the truth always eventually does to a controlled price. A comparable lab-grown stone cost about $3,410 in early 2020. By the end of 2024, it sold for roughly $892. That's a 74% collapse in 4 years. Lab-grown now sells around 90% below natural, which quietly asks the question the whole industry was built to prevent. If the two are identical and one costs a tenth as much, what exactly were you paying for? So, here's the honest version. A diamond is a common stone, made to feel rare by a company that hoarded the supply, wrapped in a tradition an ad agency invented in 1947, priced by a rule a marketer turned up, like a dial, and it loses most of its value the second you own it. None of that means you shouldn't buy one. If a diamond makes you or someone you love happy, that's a completely real reason. But buy it, knowing what it is. A beautiful thing you're purchasing for its beauty, not an investment, and not a rule you're required to obey. The most expensive part of a diamond was never the carbon. It was believing you had no choice. If you like taking apart the machines that quietly set the prices in your life, subscribe. That's the whole channel.